Hello and welcome to this video demonstrating how I create modules for Fantasy Grounds using the Module Hub extension and a number of other extensions specifically to help me make modules for Savage Worlds. The Module Maker extension itself can be used to make any core RPG based rule set modules, although some of the functionality will be limited because it is geared primarily towards Savage Worlds and Savage Pathfinder. So to demonstrate that, I've downloaded a one sheet, Deadlands Thieving Magpies. I picked it because it's only 2 sides on a PDF, so it'll be nice and quick for the scripts to adapt. Next step I've done is I've created a dedicated campaign to build the module in, and then I've loaded some extensions. So the first extension I've loaded is Module Maker. I've got it in GitHub version, but because for a long time this was the latest test version. This version's now been loaded up to the Forge. I just haven't got around to downloading it from the Forge. I'm still using the GitHub version. There is a graphical glitch in the version I'm using. I'm unaware at this time if the Forge version has the same issue. It's down to depreciated code in the GUI when you're doing the export. Doesn't affect functionality, just causes a console error. So you just learn to ignore it, but it's not a problem. On from that, we've got the Setting Maker's Tweaks extension, and that's basically that adds in extra functionality that is missing from the GUI. Basically, if you're linking arcane backgrounds to edges, setting categories on items, short descriptions, you can see skill lists, all sorts of things, it's listed in here, and there's some lovely graphical examples of it. If you're using the GUI to create things, you really want this one. You really want this because it adds all the missing bits in that you don't have to go into the XML file and edit it. Obviously, if you're using the M3L, you can manually add them. But to be honest, if you use the GUI to create the items and then export them to M3L, you definitely want this one loaded. The next one I've got on here is SWMaker, a venerable extension. Basically, take a stat block from a PDF or any other text file, and as long as it's correctly formatted as a Savage Worlds stat block, with a single click of the button, it will convert that to an NPC inside Fantasy Grounds. Usually you will have to do a bit of tweaking here and there, but it gets most of it done, including linking if you've got all the modules loaded. Then obviously I've got settings loaded for Deadlands, the Wear West and the themes. The themes are unnecessary. I like to have the theme I'm going to be seeing when the module's created, because obviously then you can see what graphically it will look like with the heading options and everything else. The settings obviously will add the extra rules in needed. You should always load the modules and the settings that the reference manual / module you're creating will require to run the game, especially if you're using SWMaker, because that will link all the edges and everything from the modules you've loaded. Finally, I'm loading the SW keywords extension. This one doesn't actually have anything to do with building of modules or anything like that. It's very useful when you're trying to work out things and testing things. It's more to do with effects and everything else. Basically, what will happen is, as you can see here, it adds on the combat tracker, and it adds under the attacks on NPCs all the keywords that apply to those attacks. It's very useful when you're creating NPCs or magic items or anything along those sorts, where for example, you've got a creature that can only be hurt by a specific effect. You can make sure you've got the effects in there. It lets you test them out, and it shows you what effects apply to each item or weapon or NPC. It's very useful when you're doing trying to work out why something isn't working. You don't actually need it for building reference manuals, but I always turn it on, so that's why it's there. Okay, my notepad seems to have minimized there. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to start up this campaign, and once it loads, we'll get started. Right, Fantasy Grounds is loaded, and the only thing I have done that I forgot to mention earlier is I copied some graphics into the image folder for this particular campaign. I've just put in a couple of logos, and I already took the grabbed the picture from the PDF and saved it as a, I'm not sure if I saved it as a WebP or a PNG, but anyway, a transparent background image. With everything, with fancy grounds and everything set up, what we do now is follow the instructions in the Module Maker. Very helpful, puts everything in you need there. So, obviously it breaks down exactly what it's doing there. It also tells you the command you can type, but there's the guide below for converting a PDF into M3L. First thing we do is open drive.google.com. And once it's in there, we copy. Let's get rid of that version. That was me mucking around, so let's get rid of that. We don't want that to cause problems. We'll move that to the bin. So we're going to basically open up so I've copied the PDF into Google Docs, and now I'm just going to open with Google Docs. So it'll convert it from a PDF into a Google Doc on the fly. There we go. There it is as a Google Doc. So then we go back to our instructions here. Next step we're going to do is using the app script. So I'm going to copy this because I know we're going to need it later. So we're going to go to extensions and then select app script. So we'll go back to here and go extensions, app script. Click on the libraries button, put the script ID in, click lookup. There you are, version 6 of Module Maker. Click add. Right, that's done. Next step. We copy this text here. Paste it in here. Now, I overwrote it, but this is something I've never worked out how to get around. When you open up the app script, it always defaults to my function as the function to run, which was the one I just overwrote. I've never found a way to change that other than running it once, letting it error out, and then it updates itself automatically to say convert, which is what we want it to say. Right, so the next thing we're going to do is we're going to I'll just copy that. We're going to give the chapter name Thieving Magpies because that's the name of the document. And we'll come back to chapters later. That's all good. And now all we do is run it. Because it's not digitally signed, we have to authorize that we want to run this script on this computer and on the document. So I'm going to review the permissions. Then you have to choose the account that you want to associate it with. Because Google hasn't verified it because it's not digitally signed, what you have to do is you have to click advanced. You have to click on go to untitled project unsafe. It will then say, oh, it wants to access your account. You say allow. And now it will run. You have to do that for every time you'll create one of these documents. Every so often what I do is I go into my Google account and I sort of delete all the unknown applications just to tidy things up. So it's run the script, and what we get here is you can see that it's analyzed it. It's found there's 53 paragraphs, and then what it does is it breaks up the report by font size. So you can see here it found a font size of 10 that we haven't defined anywhere in these definitions up here. It says it's occurred 28 times. I think that means 28 paragraphs. And then it provides a recommendation. The script determines that it's probably body text. So if we, what we should do now is add 10 to body text. Now, what I always do is I always go to the content section, which might not show up too well, but it's made that curly bracket green. So I go down to the corresponding green curly bracket here and copy it. And then I put that in Notepad. Now the reason I do this is if you edit any of these fields in here right now, which you can do, you lose the execution log. So by copying it out, you don't have to keep rerunning the report. There's no harm in rerunning the report. In fact, let's do it now just so you can see what happens. So we'll put a 10 in there. You see, it's gone and erased the report, but I can just run it again. Now when we scroll up, what I'm hoping it'll say is that 10 is, yep, there you are. It no longer says it's not in the definition. So you can see there it says not included in definition. Up here it says font size 10. So there we go. It's picked up that the 10's there. But what we'll remember is put it over here. Okay, the next one down says font sizes of 7 and 10. But notice it says not included in definitions 10. So what we've got now is some extra sections here. These are basically NPC stats, looking at the descriptions. It's probably part of the Greed Maggot. We want that. We're going to treat it as body of text. So we're just going to put a comma after the 10 and put a 7 in. And then we scroll down and see what we get next. Then we get font size 16. A town with a problem, the rusty lantern, permission to investigate, deep in the mind and aftermath. Looking over here, you can see that they are obviously separate parts of the document. So I'm going to treat them as separate articles, so there will be separate entries on the left-hand side of the reference manual. You can obviously come along here and actually find somewhere and check the font size if you can't work it out from the PDF. So we'll go back to here and we're going to say that articles are, if it's font size 16, it's an article. There, and then we shall carry on. Okay, now it's saying 9 and 7.5, and it's obviously this time, well, I know exactly what this is. It's this encounter here. So that's body text. So what we'll do is we will just come into here, we'll put a comma at 9.75 and another comma, 9.75. Sorry, we'll put a 9, comma, 7.5. I don't think the order matters that you put them in, but anyway, it does matter that you get the values right, though. I failed there. Okay, now it's found another one, font size 9, and it's obviously the fear levels. We've already put 9 as body text, so we'll just move on. Okay, we've got font size 40, not including definitions. This will be thieving magpies. So that, I'm going to say, is the chapter, but we're also going to call that a sub-chapter, because we need a subchapter to put all of these under. So we'll use the font size 40. So we're only going to have the one subchapter, and we'll put that in there as the 40. Next things we've got is 14, and it's only this one line, a Savage World setting. Interesting how it picks it up, but that's, oh, it's the one sheet TM. That's why I misunderstood there. But anyway, we're going to treat that as body text because it will be just part of the, it will be part of the credits. So we'll put that as 14. Next one down, font size 8, again body text. So we'll put that in there. And then we get down to this one. So 17.6 and 10.5 and Savage. Now, because I've tested this, I know exactly what it is. It took me a while to work it out the first time. But basically, it's picking up the word Savage in the Savage World. I didn't work it out from there. When I came over here, there it is. So all of this text here is basically what it's talking about here. We don't need it. We don't want it. All it will do is get in the middle of all the other documents. You only have to remove it again. So all we're going to do is we want to remove it. So we're going to use this code it shows here to remove the content. So I'm going to copy that. We're going to open up these square brackets, put a couple of line breaks in, and paste in the code. I'm not going to worry too much about the folding and lining it all up. It won't affect the code. If we come down here, we can see Savage Worlds Adventure Edition is more of the same. So I am literally just going to copy what it's found there. I'm going to put a comma inside the square brackets, paste in the rest of these numbers. 10.5 is already there, so we'll get rid of that one. We don't need it twice. Come down a bit further. Now, 16 and 15, the Greed Maggot. I suspect it's probably the I is one size and the rest of it is another size. Well, if the Greed Maggot's written in font size 16, then unfortunately it's going to make it an article. It's not the end of the world. We can sort that out in manually editing it, so it's not a problem. So what we will say is we want 15 though to be a body header, because it would be rather nice if the Greed Maggot, when you get the part of the entry where it comes to, which will be part of deep down in the mine, it would be nice to have it as its own body header. If it doesn't do it, we'll do it ourselves later. It's not the end of the world. And finally, we've got font size 7, which which we've already got over here. So I will get rid of that trailing comma just in case. We don't have any header blocks. That's not the end of the word. Header blocks would be the text with a pretty graphic around it. We could do the Greed Maggot as a font size 15, but we don't need it. It's a small document. So what we do now is we copy the code back. So it's just the content code. We're going all the way down to the green curly bracket. Paste that back in. And then when we run the program now, script, I suppose, if you want to be accurate about it, what hopefully we'll say now is no, not found in definitions. So you can see, look, that's good, that's good, that's good, that's good, that's good. Okay, not everything's showing as not found in definitions. So we're happy. We're ready to do the parsing. So let's go back. So here are the descriptions and what it does. So if you want to disable the analyzer, we set it to false. So we'll come back to the script. Here where it says apply true, we'll set that to false, and this time when we run the code it will actually parse it. So we'll hit the run button and it will do its stuff. And now you can see, as it says there, it's converting the document into M3L, and because it's a really small document it's already finished. So we go back to the actual document, you can see it's already gone through and updated the document. Obviously much bigger documents can take a bit of time for Google Docs to update to show the code, but we've got everything we need there. So what we're going to do now is we're literally just going to copy all the text, come over to Sublime and paste it in. Now when I've pasted it in, obviously I've got a bit at the top which I'll mention in a minute, but you notice it's already done all this fancy colouring. That's because I've got a definition file for M3L. If you don't have it, if you don't have the definition file, it's not the end of the world. I can never remember how to make the thing, but we can sort one out. If you're on the Discord forums, or if you're on the Discord Savage Worlds forum, yeah, all the forums on the website, you pop a request up, myself, Jiminy, or Lone Wolf, or any of the others I know that all use the Sublime. At least one of them will be able to show it. Yeah, so normally it will come in looking plain text. So all you'll do is you'll come down here, change it to M3L if you've got it. You can do it in plain text. The advantage of the color coding is it will highlight some possible normal mistakes you can make with Markdown. Say I wanted to make this bold. It's now made the entire document green because I haven't put the closing bold on. So when the whole document goes green for something like that, you know you've missed some formatting, and usually it does help you find out where it is. It's very useful in that regard, so that's why it's there. So next thing's next. When you do an export, if you haven't filled out this section at the top of the screen and the GUI section of the export's working, you would see a bunch of fields with empty values, and you need to fill them in before it exports. So 9 times out of 10 it's quicker just to put them in. You have, this is sort of something you, after a while, you learn what they need to be. Obviously, come back to my video, you need the name, the category, author, file, read only, player visible. Thumbnail is optional. However, if you put the thumbnail value in, it needs to have something there. More than once I've got confused why an export hasn't worked, and that's because the thumbnail path is incorrect. So going through them, name is basically the name of the module. So if we come over here, we go into modules, it's this name that's displayed here. Okay. Category name, well, that's a nice easy one again. The category name is these titles here. So anything with a category name of Deadlands, the Weird West will get put here. If anything is in its category of Savage Worlds, it will get put here. If you create a completely different category name, it will create a new category and put the module under there. Author. Now, author field is customarily used to actually put the copyright details in. When you are loading modules in, it's this line here. It's this text. That's the author text. So 9 times out of 10, you can see we tend to use it for copyright. But technically, you can put any text you like in there. So there we go. What have we got next? File. Obviously, the file name. I tend to go 2 underscores and the name. And the name that makes sense to me. The reason I use 2 underscores is it means it puts it at the top of all the modules. When you've got a few hundred modules, it makes it easier to find. If you're doing a commercial module, then the requirement is usually to put the file name as the product code. So if it's a triple ace, it will be TAG and some numbers. If it's a pinnacle, it will be S2P and their code. If it's for yourself, just give it something meaningful. So when you're looking in the module list, you can work out what it is. Read only. Read only is basically Boolean, so it's either 0 or 1. So if you set it to 0, it's not read only and therefore is editable. And when I say editable, it's only you can edit it in that campaign. If you make changes to a reference manual or any of the NPCs or anything, it only applies to that campaign. If you loaded that reference manual into another campaign, none of those changes will show up. But it does mean you can sort of edit it. Very useful. These days, as a rule, we tend to leave that as not read-only. Player visible. If it's 0, players can't see or load the module. If it's set to 1, then basically you're saying this is a module that players can use. I think it's me. I'm not sure if they've updated it. If you know the old XML files, setting that to 1 makes it client.xml. Setting it to 0 makes it read-only. Thumbnail, we just touched on earlier. It's literally the graphic that's going to be used to be the little thumbnail graphic. The first thing you notice is that as the code comes in, there's uses different dashed lines. We've got dashes, we've got equal signs, we've got underscores. There isn't a hard and fast rule to my knowledge of how you should use them. I do know that basically when you export anything using Fancy Grounds, it will always use a dashed line for at the top of the whatever you've just exported by using the record button. What I tend to use is a line of equal signs to represent a new record set. I'll go into about record sets in a bit. And as I say, dashed lines for the individual entries for that record set. Underscore, I don't, as a rule, use it. I copied this from somewhere else where I had it there, so I just haven't got rid of it. Next things down, you can see the next line down is 4 hashes and reference manual. So 4 hashes is what you use to indicate you're starting a new record set. And there's a number of record sets. So if we go to Fancy Grounds and type markdown help, we'll get the supported record set types. You can see there's a number in there. Reference manuals down here. Arcane background archetypes, armors, battles random, cyberware edges, the list goes on. These are all the supported types that the M3L will recognise. There are a couple that we don't use as a rule anymore. Demo, I'm not sure what that was ever used for. Other, that was supposedly lets you create a type, but they're depreciated. Unless you've got a very specific reason to use them, I wouldn't worry about it. But as I say, these are the standard record types. So all you would, record sets, I should say. Obviously, you will put 4 colons and then the name of the record set you want. As you can see here, what I've done is I've put 4 colons, then 4 hashes, reference manual, 2 colons, and feeding magpies. Which what that means is when you look at a module here, what's after those 2 colons is what's displayed. One of the things it always puts in as default is cover page. This is literally when you're doing the module, you'll always notice covers there, usually in the preface. So there's the cover page. It usually is where we put the nice graphics, and then it also creates a credits page. I'd say that's automatic. If you don't want them, just remove them. So we don't have a cover page for this one, being a one sheet, so I'm going to get rid of it. Credits page, well, we could make a credits page. It's literally just that one piece of code there, isn't it? Let's propagate it. See if we can make it a bit more pretty. So I'm going to take that out of there and I'll put it in there and get rid of that bit of text. We just copy that bit, go back to Fancy Grounds, hit the preview button. That's what it looks like, which is fine, but it's a bit limiting, isn't it? So what I'm going to do now is using the GUI options in Builder, I'm going to spruce it up a bit. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say, okay, well, the first thing I want is an image block. Sometimes Fancy Grounds doesn't update it. I find you just have to create a new page. It doesn't matter, you can always delete that page again. You don't need it. So there's the image block. I'm going to take the Deadlands logo. I'm going to bring it in. I'm going to make it slightly smaller so it's not full screen. 90% looks fine. I'm not going to put any text there. And then I'm going to put a header block. Again, I'm going to make sure that's above that. And we're going to call that, I'm going to be lazy and just copy it from here. There. Yellows are going to be a bit hard to read, so let's open up the frame selection and we'll go with suede. Suede is a standard text frame in Savage Worlds. Obviously, it's not going to be in non-Savage Worlds or Savage Pathfinder rules. So it's the actual graphic behind it will usually change depending on the theme, but that's all good. Then we've just got some text, so let's make that bold to make it look a bit more impressive, and then we close that off. That's not bad. So obviously that looks quite nice. I'm very happy with that. Of course, it's not in here, so and I don't really want to manually type all the code, so I'm literally going to drag the shortcut, click on record, yep, and come back to here and paste over what we've got here. And you can see what we've got is there's the credits, there's the graphics, there's the frame, and finally there's the text. Now it's obviously a single line, so it can literally stay there, but I usually tend to put it down there. And I tend to indent it because if I'm using Sublime, I can then fold it up and just see the title, which basically makes it quicker when moving through. So that's good. We're happy with that. So then we move on to the next bit, right? A town with a problem. Now that's come in a bit strange code-wise, so we'll fix that. What's it done? Let's have a look. I think I've worked it out, but let's put it in so it'd be a good example of what's going on. So when the gold and in all the commotion, so the ordering's right there, so that's all very nice. But there's an interesting thing about it. So if you notice, this text here is above the chapter, the subchapter, and the blocks text, which is all very well. But if I suddenly decided I wanted to put an image block in for the sake of argument and put that there, I'm not saying you would, but that's what you do. When you do the export, what you will notice is Fancy Grounds has decided that should be its own text block, which is correct. If you did it manually, so if we just get rid of everything else, so it's just that bit of text, copied that down, come back to here, and then just manually just add in the graphic, and then we export it. Preview. That text is above the graphic. Now in the code, it is, which is if I move it down and put it here, for argument's sake, and then do it again, preview, it's still at the top. Even though it's below the graphic here, it still goes to the top, and eventually you will get some issues. What's happening is this code here isn't inside a stated block type. So if it's just pure text, you'll get away with it. But if you start moving things around, you should always define a block type. Blocks text is technically a shortcut. If we look at the export code here, assuming you can read this, it says blocks, block type, single text, and then blocks underscore text, which is a shortcut, blocks asterisk text. So anyway, we're not going to have the graphic. I'll get rid of that. And I'm going to move that over to there. I'm going to make a town with a problem, a nice low level, like so. space I need. And then I'm just going to. So it looks fairly standard, but I mean, the original looked quite nice. It had the text with a town with a problem and everything else. So we could use the GUI, but this time I'm going to do it by hand. And luck would have it, the code we need is just up here. So we'll just copy that code, pop it down here. So we're creating a block type of header with a frame of suede, but what we're going to do is we're going to call it a town with a problem. And then when we repaste, it's updated. When you do the preview tool, it will remember the last option you have picked here, which can be useful. However, that's on the assumption that what you copy paste in is included in the copy paste. Obviously, if I literally just copied credits and the reference manual bit, hit preview, obviously it can't show a town with a problem. Likewise, you do not have to copy the whole document. If you're just working on a particular section, you can just paste that particular section in and then you can edit it. So very flexible in that regard. So I'll move that up to there and fold those up because we don't need them anymore. And then we continue on. So then obviously we've got the rusty lantern. We'll tap those in, we put that there. Again, what we'll do is we'll create a new header. This time though, go with red. So that's all we need to change. We'll make the frame type picture. All good. And there's a load of text, which is fine. All we'll do is block that in. Let's make the fear level bold. So that's asterisks. If I wanted to make some text italics, I'd use backslashes. If I wanted to make some text underlined, I'd use 2 underscores. Italic text, bolded text, and underlined text. To start a text frame, you've got the blocks *.text, which is all good. Then we've obviously got the text there. As you notice here at the moment, every single line of text is on its own line number. I can be a bit anal about that, and I like to concatenate it so a line of text is on a single line number. But, and I'm going to sort of mix it up here. Quite a random selection of text there. When I copy paste this back, preview it, see in the actual reference manual, doesn't make the slightest bit of difference how the text is laid out. The only thing that does make a difference is if I get rid of these line breaks and then paste the text again, you suddenly get a huge mash of text. So the only bit of formatting you really need to worry about is okay. So okay. Marshall wants to hear the fearing magpie is. So there we go. Ah, yes. However, sometimes you might want to indent some text. Maybe you want, okay, and say you wanted, say all of this text wasn't a reference manual, it was part of an edge or a feature in the reference manual. You know how they indent it and it all stays indented. Well, that didn't work. What did I do wrong there? Oh, it did work. I just didn't look. So as you can see at the moment, what we've got is a nice indent there for the first paragraph, but all the rest of it is not indented. Now, obviously, I could just get rid of the line breaks again, but you'd have a huge amount of indented text. So instead, what we're going to do, if we do and sharp 13 and a semicolon, and then just copy and paste that bit, what you can see it's done is, although it does annoyingly put a slight hard case space in, it's now indented the second paragraph under the first. Now, as it stands, there's no line break, but if you want a line break, then all we'll do is write a second one. Read it again, and now you can see it can be indented. So that's the way you can force sort of paragraphs of indented text. Okay. Right, let's have a think. What else do you get when you're doing code? Paragraph types, tables, links. Tables, just build them in the GUI. Trust me, it's easier. Links we're going to cover in a little while. Lists, well, as you can see, it's just the bullet point. That's 2 dashes. Chat frame. So if you want to make something a chat frame, all you do is put 2 less than and 2 greater than at the beginning and the end of the paragraph you want to be a chat frame. Or actually, I think it's technically a story frame, isn't it? Oh no, they call it a chat frame. So there we go. And then you obviously, when you click on it, it will, let's clear it to make it, when you click on it, it pops it in a nice window. You know, when it's a chat frame, you can also chat commands assign speaker. They've moved it. So then obviously you put some text, and then obviously when you do it, now Mr. Bad Guy speaks it. So obviously now we can cut that out and see what the code is. So if we drag that down to record and move up a bit, you can see that it's very straightforward. It is just the name of the person who's doing the talking with 2 colons. So we come back over here and we'll change it from being the bad guy to the good guy doing the talking. And then we'll copy this again. Now you can see it's the good guy who's talking about the paragraph. Is there any other paragraph types we haven't covered? Let's have a look. Heading. Heading. Yes, good point. Fear level 2. Okay, so at the moment we've got fear level 2 bolded, which is fine. You wouldn't normally do a whole paragraph, but if you want to do a heading, it's just 2 hashes. So 4 hashes, a record set, 3 hashes, an article or a record of the record set. 2 hashes will be a header. Go back and do a preview. You see that whole paragraph is a header. As soon as you do a line break, though, it will go back to being on its own. Now you can sort of, by using Shift Enter, put in some line breaks. I'm not sure what the code looks like for that. I think it's going to be using, yeah, there you go. As you can see, that's where it's inserting the and #13s. The really interesting thing about that is, I think when you do it yourself, it's going to go and put them back in with a slight indent, even though it doesn't show it on the screen then. And #13. Let's go with that. Let's do it twice. Then we'll do it twice again. And then we'll do it twice again. Go. That. Something wrong. Did I do? Did I? I know what I did wrong. I pressed carried return. That's got to be, that would appear to have to be 1 line if you're going to do something clever like that. Oh, this is where, there you go. Okay, so that's an exception to, actually it would make sense because Fantasy Grounds will automatically treat multiple lines as separate paragraphs. So if you did want to do a lot of text in uppercase in code, you'll have to make sure it's on a single line. But you see what I mean? There's a slight indent. It doesn't show it when you do it in the editor, but it will always show it when you actually put it back. And I think that's all of our types. And obviously, body text would be the default, so that's no problem at all. Right, moving on. Okay, next thing's next, NPCs. Anyway, it says Buster Brannigan used the veteran gunman profile from Deadlands Weird West. Thinking about it, I probably could have showed it here. So, yeah. It's also got the eye, which is the Wildcard logo. Okay, so what I'm going to do is, now, up until now, you might be wondering why I've got the same document duplicated on the page. It's basically for when you start doing linking and stuff, makes life a lot easier. Notepad will do it with a split view, and obviously Sublime does it with clone to view. I haven't used many other editors than those two that have windows and tabs. I'm sure they all do it. So, right, we're going to start creating NPCs. I haven't done the rest of the document, which means we will have some, it will most likely give us some errors if I try to build a module. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to get rid of the rest of the module because we don't need it for the purposes of the demonstration. You don't really need to see me doing the rest of the module. So we'll pretend the rest of the module's in there. And what I tend to do is once you get sort of clear of the reference manual, I'll create a new record area. So because I'm going to create a new record set, I'll put in a number of equals. And for some reason, when M3L does exports, it uses 45 equals. I don't believe there is an actual requirement or limit on how many you can do, but I'm going to do it anyway. Then I'm going to put 4 hashes because I'm creating a new record set. If we come back to here, because we can't remember what the NPCs record set is, big hint there. And then scroll it down, we can see that NPCs is actually called NPC, or capital and a small s. Again, I'm not sure that's actually. Oh, well, I think I've always done that, so I don't think it matters exactly, but it's always safe to put it exactly the same. Now, Deadlands likes to call NPCs critters, so I'm going to obviously create an entry called critters, which is fine. And then what I'm going to do is, well, I need the veteran gunman. Now, what I can do is I could come over here, I can go into NPCs, I can go and find gunman, veteran gunman. I could then literally drag down the record. It will basically export the entire NPC as code and paste it in, which is perfectly reasonable. But there's a nice trick to save you having to do all that. All you really need to do is find the gunman, create a link to him. Rather than a record, I dragged it onto link, and you can see it's okay. We come over here, and what we're going to do is I'll have to put the single line in myself because I didn't export a code. I'm just printing out a link. I'll put the link in. And now, if this was in the reference manual, that would just create a link. Well, in fact, it won't show it, so I'll show you later. But if you literally wanted to link to an existing other module, the easiest way to do it is drag the link down to that link button, and then you can paste it in. So you literally could, in your reference manual, put a link to the gunman. You could even then just change this text here to say Buster Brannigan. Okay, and what will then happen is if I just take all the code from the top to that point, come back over here, type module make, which is how you make a module, hit enter, come to Thieving Magpies, go down to the Rusty Lantern, scroll it down, there's a link to Buster Brannigan, and when I click on it, it opens up Gunman Veteran, and you can do it that way. But this one shot doesn't do it, but sometimes you'll get this NPC uses the stats of another NPC, but has one skill or one edge different. And that's where the M3L becomes really powerful. So what we're going to do is, instead of actually using it as a reference link, what we're actually going to do is we're going to make a subtle change to the code. We are going to basically get rid of the curly brackets and NPC, which says it's create a link to an NPC. We'll put the 3 hashes because we're creating a new record. And then we're going to still point to references NPCs, Deadlands, Weird West, Marshall Guide, and then the 2 colons. And then we're going to put Buster Brannigan over here, like so. Now, if I basically did the same thing again, come over here, do the module make. This time, obviously, because I included the critters record set, it's included in the module. Obviously, I haven't created a link to it in the adventure, so that's gone because I deleted it. But if we go into critters, we've got Buster Brannigan. This time, although it's a veteran gunman, it actually shows the name Buster Brannigan. Although we haven't changed anything else. We come over here, you've got the default text and other stuff. Now, maybe we don't want this text. But that's the only thing. We just want to remove that text. We don't want to replace it. It's just not appropriate for this NPC. So what we'll do is we'll go at hat equals, and basically that means remove something. In this case, we're going to remove the text field. So if we do that and we copy it, we come back here, remake the module, which deletes the old one and overwrites it and puts it up again. And then we open up critters and we go into Buster Brannigan now and go to main. You can see the text is gone. Useful. But you do not need to remove the text if you wanted to change it. So if we just wanted it to say Buster Brannigan is a bad man, instead, yeah, make critters, we go back to Buster Brannigan. Main. Now, so you see, you don't need to remove the text to overwrite it. You can just overwrite it. So that's good. And in fact, if you tried to remove the text and overwrite it, it would overwrite it and then remove the text. I found that out before. So that's all good. Anyway, we'll put it back to he's a gunman. We don't need any text. So we'll just put it back to remove the text because I don't want it saying he's a generic gunman. I just leave it like that. Now, a little trick I use when you want to tweak an NPC is, I called it Mr. NPC. It's literally just my idea of humour, I suppose. So, actually, let's get Buster Brannigan back up. So Buster Brannigan obviously is a standard gunman, so he's got some skills. But maybe Buster Brannigan has an extra skill. I don't know what skill we're going to give him. Let me see. Let's give him healing. So if I drag healing over here and put healing at D6 for argument's sake into Mr. NPC. And the reason I say I use Mr. NPC is because he doesn't have anything except the default stats. So when you drag him out, he'll be the sort of as small as an NPC can be in Savage Worlds. So I drag him out. You can see all his stats are there. And I normally would have another field open. So there's Mr. NPC. You can see there, look, right at the bottom, skills, asterisk, meaning new. Not necessarily as in it's a new entry in the NPC, not necessarily been added because obviously, well, actually, yes, it would because it's building them. Anyway, skill, create a new skill, name it healing, and set the skill to a D6. So we take that code there and just paste it in there. What this will now do is it will go and take the gunman veteran from the Marshal's Guide, rename it to Buster Brannigan, remove the text and add the healing skill. And obviously this is creating a copy of the original gunman. It's not making any changes to the original gunman. So the next time you copy a gunman veteran down and change it again, if they need the healing skill and remove the text, you'll have to do it again for every NPC you copy. What I find you can't do is you can't copy an NPC that you're building in this module. So if later on it said Fred Finch has exactly the same stats as Buster Brannigan, And you obviously, because we've created the stats for Buster Brannigan here, unfortunately we can't point Fred Fringe back to Buster Brannigan because it doesn't exist in another module to refer to copy it. So what you'd have to do is copy the whole Buster Brannigan, God, his name's a tongue twister, NPC again and change the name. It's the only limitation of doing it this way, but it's still very, very powerful. Likewise, let's just say for argument's sake, Buster Brannigan doesn't have the quick draw edge. We would literally come back in and go at tilde equals. I think it's going to be edges dot quick draw. Let's find out. Find out what happens and see if that works. I know you can do it, but I might have to stop and look it up. Let's find out if I got it right. Critters, Buster Brannigan. Scroll it down and look, yeah, there you go. He's lost the quick draw edge. So you can take away edges. Obviously, likewise, you want to give him a different edge because you took away quick draw. Maybe he's alert instead. So then we'll just add it into Mr. NPC. We'll drag it out. And then we can see that Mr. NPC now has the alertness edge. And we'll put that in there. Now, obviously, my version of Buster Brannigan bears no relation to how the adventure says it, but who cares right now? So there we go. So there we are. At the end of the day, Buster Brannigan is a veteran gunman. We've renamed it Buster Brannigan. We're removing the text field so it's blank. We're giving him the healing skill. We're taking away his quick draw edge and giving him the alertness edge instead, which is all good. So the only other thing we need to do now is create a link to the newly created NPC rather than the link we copied before in this module. Now, we don't need all this text because obviously on a piece of paper, it tells you where you need to go to find his stats. But in Fantasy Grounds, of course, we're creating the NPC. You don't need to know where his stats came from. All you care about what his stats are. So we'll get rid of those. So create a link. All we're going to do, it always does that. It's very strange the way it does that when you've got some text there. So to create a link, in M3L is literally that: 2 curly brackets, a question mark, an @ sign, and then to close the curly brackets. Obviously, you've got to put some data in there. So what normally happens is you have to point to the record set you want to link to. So I'm going to point to critters because that's what I called the NPCs. And then, so that's the name of the record set. And then what you have to do is link to the actual record. And obviously that's going to be whatever after those 2 colons. So that will be Buster Brannigan. We'll get rid of that. So now if we copy that, come back to here, do a module make, go thieving magpies down to the rusty lantern, scroll down. There's a link to Buster Brannigan. And when you click on him, up comes Buster Brannigan. And his stats are there. Now, you keep noticing lately when I'm doing the critters and everything, I keep doing this. I keep reusing the module make command. Obviously, because it's the last thing in the I typed, I can keep cursoring up. What you can see I've done, and it's what I recommend doing, you don't have to use it 9, 10, 11. That's just what I use. I find I've got into the habit of basically typing clear, which will clear the screen, and dragging it down to a function key, then typing /module flush. That just clears up the db.xml of any sort of rogue data. So if you're getting some weird stuff, always useful one. I just do it automatically by default. And then obviously I've dragged the /module make in as well. Now, I always tend to click the preview button, but again, there's another shortcut. If you just type markdown preview, and we drag that down to a function key, you don't have to click the preview button. It's all down to your personal preference, of course. Now, if I copy all the text and click the preview button, you get a preview. And now that has only previewed the reference manual record set. It's ignored everything else. Although I copy pasted it, it's ignored everything. And all it's done is previewing the reference manual. So when you get down to the Rusty Lantern down here, what you will find is a link. Now, it doesn't show where the link's going to, but there is a way around that in the preview, and sometimes it's a good habit. So at the moment, it's the same as always. You can make a link name whatever you want. It doesn't have to be limited to the default. So obviously up to this point, we've got the record set, we've got the record, but then if we put 2 colons in, we can now make this link whatever we want. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to put in bold, I'm going to open up some cursors. I'm going to put WC because he's meant to be a wildcard. And Veteran Gunman was. That's a good point, actually. I'll put that in a sec. Buster Brannigan. Okay, there we go. So now, when we copy that, we preview it, we scroll down. Although, actually, I'm glad I did that. It shows the mistake. So although the link doesn't work because it can't link because it hasn't got any databases there, it is just a preview of the reference manual. You can see the code I've put in. Now, I said I'd put in 2 asterisks to make this bold, but you notice it's not bold, and there's just showing 2 asterisks, which is a helpful hint that what I've done wrong. But if we come back to here, the issue is I forgot to put the second 2 to make it to close off the bold, and therefore now when I preview it, you can see Buster Brannigan is a wildcard and he's in bold. So we're okay because Buster Brannigan's a wildcard and the Veteran Gunman was a wildcard, but the Brannigan's boys are using the Gunman stat NPC. So if we look at Gunman, you can see Gunman aren't wildcards, which is fine. So what we're going to do is we're going to drag a link down to a Gunman. We're going to come back over here. And what we're going to do is we're going to put some lines into it. And again, this is just a marker for us to see if we're creating a new record. Then going to put in the link. I'm going to proper case that. Put this in. And I'm going to call this chap Brannigan's boy. It's a bit of a it works as a multiple, doesn't it? Brannigan's boys, but as a single, it's a bit limiting. But anyway, so we'll put Brannigan's boy in. So, and there's 1 per here and all that. So, what we'll do is, and that's fine. What I'm going to do is I want to create maybe one of the Brannigan's boys is Brannigan's son, for argument's sake, and we'll call him Jed. And although he's got the stats of a gunman, because he's not as good a gunman as his dad, he is a wild card. But because we've told it to copy a gunman, we're going to have to do something to make him a wild card. And I'll show you what you do now. It's very straightforward. All you do is you go at wild card, 2 colons, and number 1. Okay, that is literally it. So if we copy that, come back to here, we'll do a clear of that screen, we'll do a flush of the data, and then we'll remake. You should really clear that as well. You don't have to. And then remake the module. So if we come in now, you can see we've got one of Brannigan's boys, who is a gunman. He's not a wildcard. And then we'll have Jed Brannigan, who's here. And we'll drag that down. And you can see that Jed Brannigan is not a wildcard, even though he's meant to be. So what went wrong? What went wrong is I can't spell wildcard. Try again. Clear it. Module flush. Module make. Delete them. That's the best reason to delete them, so it clears down the old records. Go back into critters. We'll go to Jed. And now he's a wildcard. His stats will be identical, but we've just made a non-wildcard into a wildcard. Very straightforward. Okay, the last one we're going to do are the Rusty Lane patrons. Okay, I'm going to leave Jed there. We're not going to use him in the encounter, but I'm going to leave him there. There's no harm in having an NPC we don't need. So we're going to do 1, 2, 3. Now I know what this is off the top of my head, so I'm just going to type it. I get it wrong. Yep, that's all we need for that one. And then we'll go clear, module flush, module make. Critters, there's your rusty Tavern patron. Okay, I don't really want him to be a blonde chap. Let's fix that. We're going to just use this token code here. Token, and then it's obviously a link to the rule set, letters rule set. I'm going to use the letter R because he's a rusty Tavern patron. We now come back, do a clear, module make. Patron, and maybe the links have changed for the letters. Let's fix that. They've moved the letters around, haven't they? Now those letters are show them, is it? Well, I'll have to use the new ones. So actually, let's get Mr. NPC back for this. Let's drag the letter R down for Mr. NPC. Yeah, actually, that does remind me of something else that M3L will support. Come back to here. Mr. NPC again. What we're going to do is we're going to go cowboy. So what we'll do is we'll take the, if we pop the human male token there for the cowboy, we'll make his full body, or the image we're going to share out, well, we'll make that that, and we can make the 3D token a chap on a horse. Now I know logically it doesn't make sense to have three different people, three different tokens that don't bear any relation to each other, but it's helpful. And if we drag that down to here and we do that, what we get is it should give us the code for the picture, the token, and the starter token. So if we take those and I put them under one of Brannigan's boys, there we go. So now we've set the picture, the token, and the 3D flat token for something that didn't have them in the past. So that's looking good. Right, what's the next bit? So obviously you need to create links to those. So we'll quickly pop the links in. Critters. Good boy. Critters. Patron. Yeah, which is good, except of course all I've done is linked to the NPC stats, which is fine. The encounter, so I could literally put colon. I could just put Brannigan's boys 1 per hero, and I could make that proper case. Put 2 colons in, put that there. Get rid of this text because we don't need it, and then that. Clear it, flush it, make it, and then go feeding magpies, a rusty tavern, and move down. And you can see there, yeah, there's Wildcard, Rusty Brannigan. There's obviously I've missed the bracket off, but it doesn't matter. His boys, there's 1 per hero, and the rusty lantern patrons. And obviously when the encounter starts, I can drag the NPCs over. I can count the number of players, and I can obviously drag them over, and I can drag 8 of those over. It's nothing wrong with that, but it's a bit of a faff, especially when Fantasy Grounds has support for that already under encounters, what they call random encounters. So we're going to create one. So we're going to come over here and we'll create a nice new blank random encounter. And what we're going to do is we're going to call it, what I tend to do is I tend to call it encounter colon and the rusty lantern. It means later on when it's just listing all the encounters in the module in this window here, you can find it if you want to. Well, not in this window, in the window it opens for encounters. It doesn't make any difference. The actual link, obviously, as you saw, you can change the text. So you can drag in Buster Brannigan, except, and this is another limitation. Obviously, if I wanted to take an NPC from another module, if I take a glom and drag it in, no problem at all. But again, we haven't created this module yet. So there's two ways you can deal with this. One way is you could actually right now, we could, obviously we've got all the NPCs, we could actually hit the export button, export the module, it will create a module. Unfortunately, Fantasy Grounds doesn't pick up new modules added unless you completely close Fantasy Grounds and then open it up, and it scans the modules folder for all the modules it can see. Then you'd be able to load the module in, and then you could drag it to an encounter, which you can then drag down into the code and rebuild all the module, which will work, but I'm not going to say it's not the quickest, but sometimes it can be the easiest. I won't deny that. So what we're going to have to do instead is just drag in Mr. Friendly NPC. Now he's not exactly what we want, so we're going to have to edit stuff afterwards. And 9 times out of 10, I will forget to do this at least once. Likewise, you could, technically speaking, we've created Buster Brannigan Boys. We can just click this button up here, which imports all the data in this module we've made into the campaign, which is another way to export the module. We'll cover that later, but if we click that button there and say yes, it's now added all the NPCs we created into the campaign. So if you look under, stories, isn't it? So if you look under stories, you can see it's added in all the pages that we created. So I'm just going to get rid of all those because we don't need them. And it's added the NPCs. Now there's nothing stopping us. It's dragging Buster Brannigan down, the Brannigan Boys, the Rusty Patron. Obviously they're going to be hostile. They're going to be neutral. We know there's 8 of them. We know there's 1 of Buster. And we know of the Brannigan's Boys, there are 1 per. So actually we can just type $PC, can't we? We don't even need them 1 times. So that encounter will create 1 Brannigan's Boy for every PC, 1 Brannigan, and then obviously you can drag him to Combat Tracker. And we can take that code and we can drag it down. Now, this has an advantage in the fact all the code you want's there. So in some ways I would argue that. However, the fun and games will start when you try to export that, because the links are to this particular campaign, not the campaign of someone else who's loading the module. Likewise, if you build your own module, you'll probably go use a different campaign for your adventure. So the NPCs won't be there. But that gets you 90% of what you need. So what we're going to do now is we're going to come over here. We're going to create a new record set. We'll use the equal signs. We're going to use the form hashes for a new record set. And this happens to be called Battles Random. Or 2 colons, and I tend to call these encounters random. And then I tend to call the normal ones encounters. Then if I control V that, it will paste in the code I just exported. So I can then tab all that across. And the only thing we need to change, as long as we're happy with all the other tokens, the only thing we need to change is the link line, because as I say, this is pointing to the NPC in this campaign. If you loaded up this reference manual module and use it in this campaign, it would work. But that's not what we're going to do, because we're making a module to give to other people or sell, or you're going to use in one of your own campaigns, but not the one you built it in. So what you have to do is we have to make a link. And earlier we said the link is !@, and I'm not entirely sure why, but here you have to leave that leading at, and then you'll put a question mark and a second @ sign, and then we're back to creating a link as per usual. So I can literally borrow that, put it there. So now we're saying go to critters and find Buster Brannigan. So then I can do the same thing with the next one down. I can copy that, get rid of that, put a question mark, another @ sign, and put that in. And the last one I need to do is this one. Now, as long as these links work, we'll be okay. And I haven't tested them, so we'll find out. Question mark @ paste that in. Okay. So that's all well and good. But of course, now what we need to do is create a link to the encounter we just created. And as long as you spell it right, all we have to do is put the record set in, which is encounters random, and then we just do encounter a rusty lantern, like so. Do that, clear it, we'll flush it, export it. Now you can see we've got an encounter. When we open that up, we've got Brannigan's Boys, Buster Brannigan and Patrons. When I click on that, it's opening Buster Brannigan, but obviously it could still be opening this one. So what I'll do now is I'll delete all these MPs out of here. When I click on the link, it still works because it's linking to the Buster Brannigan in the module. And now you can see we've got a new entry because we've created a new record set, and it literally just shows that one encounter. Right. So up to now, everything we've done is really just using SWMaker, which is fine. As I was saying about the SWTweaks, if I go and create an item, you can see it's added in a category field. That's an example of what SWTweaks adds. And the category field is very critical when you're creating lists of items. I'll make another video another day about item creation if people need it. It's there's a couple of gotchas. It's very straightforward. But to be honest, if you are using if you use SWTweaks and you put a category in and you keep all the items in the same category, half your problems will go away. So you'll be fine on that one. The last thing I really want to go over is the creating NPCs. We've got this lovely bit of text here about the Greed Maggot. So what I'm going to do is it doesn't go around. So I'm going to copy that. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to build this using the GUI, just because it's just easier. So if I do a preview, it will create empty code because I've got nothing there. So if I put in there the Greed Maggot, see the text field's not showing up, but there we go. Oh, now it's showing me text because obviously that wasn't busy somewhere. So let's take that text, the Greed Maggot, and take stats for it, like so. There. I'm not going to worry too much about the formatting. So it really doesn't matter. What I will do though is, because it's split over 2 pages, you can't just copy it straight from the PDF, which you can do sometimes. It all depends on the formatting. So I'm just going to paste them in there, and again, you don't need to, but I tend to make sure that the skills and the stats are on a single line. I'm going to get rid of the funny characters. Again, SWMaker usually ignores them, but as I say, because if the word wrapping for this wasn't off, in theory, what I would normally do is literally just copy the whole entry and then just keep it straight into clipboard. Okay, so that's the Greed Maggot, and there's a description for it. If you want multiple paragraphs of the description, you have to put line breaks in as before. Everything else is fine. What it uses to determine special abilities is it looks for that, obviously, phrase special abilities, and then anything with a colon after it will be treated as a special ability, which will catch you out on some non-pinnacle stat blocks. You know, if a third party's made a Savage Worlds adventure, sometimes you'll get some interesting features because their stat blocks are subtly different. But you may just have to manually tweak them to make them work. The only thing, so if I copy all that into clipboard and create the NPC, it will do everything. But there's one extra step we can do. If we look at the original, it's obviously got the wildcard icon. So if we put a question mark in front of the name of the NPC, that will tell SWMaker that we want to make a wildcard. So I copy that into clipboard. I come over to the NPCs tab. I click the Make NPC button, and it's passed through the file, and it's created the Greed Maggot. Okay, so you can see here, there's all its stats, there's all its abilities. If we go to the Combat tab, there's its bite. If we go back down here and look at Burrow, that should link to the Burrow effects in the modules. If there's the Fear one. As I say, these are the links to these are working because the modules are there. So it will search for all the modules for a special ability that matches the name to the left of the colon. Mind Control, I'm fairly confident, is a custom one. And as you can see here, it's created its own thing. Now, this is a good example of where the SWMaker won't catch everything. And it's usually down to non-standard ways of doing powers, for example. So it's showing here the maggot has 10 power points and knows the puppet power under its influence. It doesn't say what skill. 10 power points, knows the puppet power, and the mind is on it. So that's interesting. Doesn't tell you what skill to use. I'm going to say smarts for the sake of argument because it doesn't say. So what we're going to have to do it manually. So what we'll do is we'll come down to the powers. We'll go for arcane backgrounds. Let's put it on the normal power list. Doesn't say whether it's magic. It's Deadlands. I'm going to treat it as magic. So I'm going to give it the arcane background of magic, which instantly creates the arcane background with a default number of power points. That's, as I say, because the rule sets are programmed in. And it says it's got the puppet power. So if we drag the puppet power in, the Deadlands Weird West version. Now, obviously, magic usually uses spell casting, but the Greed Maggot doesn't. So what we're going to do, we're going to right-click on Attack Info. We're going to go up to the type. We're not going to pick any of those. We're going to right-click and set the trait to Smarts and close it off. And there we go. Now we've got the Greed Maggot doing mind controls. We can leave the link there showing that the entry that says it's got it, but we've manually added in the puppet. So sometimes you will have to do that. Likewise, you can add keywords. So if I come down to here and put a keyword in, I want the bite to be piercing damage, for argument's sake, so I'll put that in. And now you can see that's where the keywords is kicking in. There's the piercing I've added in. So that's SW keywords kicking in. So if I drag this one to the combat tracker, will it show up, I wonder? No. Yeah, it did. NPC wildcard foe. Yeah, it is doing it. It's just for the NPC type. Okay, fair enough. Anyway, so that's the Greed Maggot. I copied the graphic earlier, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to open up this, and I'm literally going to use the same graphic for all three. So I'm going to drop that there, I'm going to drop that there, I'm going to drop that there. All nice and good. Then I'm going to export that. So I'm going to go out to Records, export that, and then I'm just going to make sure you put it in the right section. So there is, we want to be in the critters section. So all I need to do is put the cursor at the end of the last one, and then Control V, and in comes all the stats for the Greed Maggot. And because I like to be able to close things down, because then if I do that, you see that's a lot easier to see what you're looking for. There's all the stats. I tend to put 2 line breaks before the equal signs because it's a bit hard to see on this on the screen here, but it makes the line breaks, the double line breaks, are easier to spot. So I know it's a new record set. So we put the Greed Maggot in there. So we're going to come back up here now because we've got the NPC, and we'll finish off this page. So let's very quickly make it look pretty. Don't want to take too long here. I want to make it. I want it to be a nice stat block. I'm very tempted now to delete half its stats. Now, actually, one thing I didn't go over is the Greed Maggot has got what the parser has defined as an attack. So if we go and look at the stats for bite, it's determined it's got natural weapons. And sometimes it doesn't always get that right, but if it determines an NPC has got natural weapons, it won't add an unarmed attack. But if it doesn't detect an attack, it will sometimes add the unarmed attack. So sometimes you might get bite and unarmed attack. So in this case, I would have just automatically removed the unarmed attack it created. Okay, I'm going to give special abilities a nice big header to make it stand out. I'm going to bold up these attributes. Again, this is just to make it look pretty. Because we put all the stats in the NPC. You could argue that you don't actually need the actual text. So anyway, that's all very well, but we can probably make it a little more interesting. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come down to here and I'm going to put the Greed Maggot in. Now, I can literally just drag the Greed Maggot, drop him in there, and then manually name it. But that will link to the image, and later on it won't be a custom image in the images file. Now, with a new way of doing things where this becomes the image for the monster, that might be preferable. But historically, what you would do is you'd actually create a map record and then drag that and drop it in there. As you can see, it made no visible difference other than it's added a title, but the code that it's used to generate that will be different, and it will now export the image that's been referenced when the time comes. Now, we could leave it there, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to come up, I'm going to copy all this text, I'm going to paste it in there, I'm going to get rid of this window, and then when I can see where the graphic ends, I'm going to do that. So that gives us a very nice looking page where we've got the stats, the Greed Maggot, we've got a picture and everything else. And obviously, as you know, I'm just going to drag that down to there, and then I can just paste it in as a new article. Nice and easy way to generate it. Obviously, because I created it on the fly, it doesn't know what the chapter and subchapter will be. So I will copy those from another entry. And this will let me mention the one thing I realized I didn't mention earlier. The difference between, which again, we don't actually need that for the example I'm making here. The difference between blocks underscore text and blocks asterisk text. So you will get both, and if you get them the wrong way around, it can get very confusing when you're trying to work out what's going wrong with the layout. So at the top here, we've obviously got a block type of single text, and then we're saying here's the text that's going in that block type. So then there's the blocks text and the text. But we do know we can abbreviate that to that. So we'll do that. But as you come down to this one here, you've got your blocks type of image right. So you can see it's going to be creating an image, and then there's all the details for what the image is, where the link to the image file is, and what the scale of the image should be. And then because it's a block and image, you can see there's a blocks underscore text, and there's the text file. Now, if for any reason you typed that, what will actually happen is, unlike it's showing it here with the image here and the text alongside it, what will now happen is there won't be any text here, and this new text and this text here will actually be below the frame, like so. Because if you remember what I said, is blocks asterisk text is a shortcut for that. So at the moment, that says create a block of text in the existing block type and display text, whereas blocks asterisk text says create a new block type and then put some text in it. So that's the subtle difference. So if text is doing weird things, 9 times out of 10, it's because you've used an underscore where you needed an asterisk, or you've used an asterisk where you need an underscore. So anyway, I think that's covered most of the basics. Please feel free to post questions and comments in the video, or basically look us up on the Fancy Grounds Discord site, and there's a Savage World section. By all means, just ask questions in there. If I'm not around, there's quite a few other people that use M3L on there, and I'd be more than happy to help you out. It's a very nice community. So obviously we're very happy with our completely finished document, even though it is even shorter than this very short document over here. So now we're going to make the module. So as I alluded to earlier, there are two ways you can do this. I'm going to sort of clear everything down. I'm going to get rid of all this stuff. So there's two ways to do this. The first way is obviously you can make the module and click the import button. This will then import the entire module into the campaign, and then all you do is do the standard export. Obviously you can fill out all the details you want, and on the export types, then obviously you want to export. Well, we've got NPCs in there, we've got images in there, we didn't create any items. I know we've got a random encounter, and you will have to make sure you get everything that you've done. I mean, it will help in the fact that if you go over to the uncategorized, you'll find what you've added to the campaign. So if we go over to uncategorized NPCs, we've got that. And if we go to encounters, random, you can see there's quite a few rusty lanterns because I've obviously done a few builds of the thing. So I imported it a few times, but anyway. And then you can export it. And there's not a problem with that. The only real issue with that is if you make a change to the module, including any of the NPCs or anything else, you're going to have to go through every item that you've created and delete them before you can import again. Otherwise, you end up with duplicates. The way I do it, however, is to use the built-in export. Now, this will cause a console error, as I say, because of depreciated code still in this version. Hopefully, it will get fixed at one point. Doesn't affect the functionality. I can't say functionality. If we click that button, I'm going to get a console error. Okay, now you can see what the problem is. The problem is this code, what it's meant to display here is meant to look much more like the standard export window, but basically some control frame has been removed that this is using, so that's all it is. But as long as you've set all of those values correctly up here, it shouldn't matter. All you do is you click the export button, and you can see it says the module Thieving Magpies has been exported. So if we open up Windows, we go to Fancy Grounds Unity, we go to modules, we go find, I forgot what I called it. MT, wasn't it? Did I call it MT rather than TM? Yeah, I called it MT instead of rather TM. There we are. So there's the Thieving Magpies module. So if I open that up, I've got it set up that WinZip will automatically open module files. If you open up WinZip, you can see there is the logo. There's the Greed Maggot image. There's the actual code it's created. There's the definition file. There's the thumbnail. As I say, I didn't have a nice one to use, so I just used that. And if we open up db.xml, which will probably open up with Notepad++, because I've never got around to changing it, there is the code. So you can see there's the Greed Maggot, there's the library code, and there is the whole module. Now, from this point on, if you want, you can, if you really like editing XML, you can just keep editing this XML file, but you don't need to, and this is why I quite like the M3L. You can make as many changes you like, re-export it, it'll overwrite the module. If you're using the import to campaign option, you just have to clear these down if it's duplicating. The only thing you shouldn't clear down are the images, and this is the really clever bit. You can pop all your images in this campaign. You don't have to reference them in the M3L. When it builds the module, it will only take images that are actually referenced in the M3L. So obviously here we're talking about that bit of code up here where we did the image link, and the M3L will be pointing to the campaign image. The actual image, we go into the reference library, into chapters, into the sub-chapters, reference page 3, which will be, also M3L generates all the keywords, which helps you do the searching. So if we come in here, I'm going to have to take a guess where the graphics are. It's not that block. It'll be block 2, wouldn't it, which is the image block. Here we are. If we go into the image link, you can see that it's actually linking correctly to the module. That's the only time it does. Everything else you have to make sure you've done correctly in the M3L. And I think that's it. I don't think there's anything else we need to cover. I hope you found this useful. Any questions, as I say, post them in the comments, or by all means find me on Discord and ask there. I hope this helps you a lot, and very many productive hours building your own modules in Fantasy Grounds. But don't stop buying my ones, or Jiminy's, or anyone else's. Only kidding. Obviously, it's down to time, isn't it? If you've got the time, there's no reason not to use everything I've shown you to create your own modules. Or if you want the convenience of someone else has done all the hard work in the first place, you can buy them. But it's really up to you. Just enjoy using Fantasy Grounds and have good games of Savage Worlds, Savage Pathfinder, or whatever else you're playing. Thank you very much. Goodbye.